to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to make a bag from a new designer, brand new to my channel, never made a bag from her before. Today, we're going to make the ready-to-go purse from Toby Stylx. Now, this adorable little bag can be a crossbody bag or a wristlet. And you can see in this one, I made it as a wristlet. I'm going to be making as a wristlet today as well. Because we do a lot of crossbodies on this channel, I want to mix it up a little bit. I want to do the wristlet. So you can see we have this cute little wristlet on the side. We have this adorable little tassel, which we will be going over. And then we have this beautiful angular detail. Now, I just love this center triangle. This bag can be very beginner friendly, and we'll go over that in just a moment. So you can see we have the contrasting on the side. On the back is just one big panel. You can definitely mimic this on the back if you'd like. So you would just use this combo for the back panel as well, but if you want to keep it simple, just use one piece of fabric for the back. On the top, we have a zipper with some zipper tabs. You guys know I'm a big fan of zipper tabs. I don't like the zipper butt seam. You know what I mean? Like when the zipper goes all the way to the edge, and then when you try to sew the seams together, it gives you like a little zipper butt. I don't like that. So I love that we have tabs for this. When we open up the lining, we have a zip pocket and a slip pocket. Both of those pockets are completely optional. So if you are a true beginner and you just want to do the very bare minimum, you do not have to do the pockets. One of the coolest things about this bag is this little detailing here. Now this is an option. She gives you two options for kind of closing up the exterior. This little rivet or Chicago screw detail that we have on the sides here is one option. And if you have a rivet press or if you have Chicago screws, it's going to be a very easy and really interesting way to finish off the sides. It's very, very cool. I'm actually going to be showing you how to do the other way today, which does not require any additional hardware. It doesn't require any Chicago screws or rivets. It's just sewing. But this is a really fun way to do this. You don't have any raw edges of vinyl, so if you're worried about your material, don't worry about your material. You can use vinyl, quilt cotton, anything for this bag. So we're going to play around with the materials a little bit today. I honestly love the chicness of this bag. I love that it's got a flat bottom. I'm a big flat bottom kind of girl when it comes to bags. I like my bags to be able to just sit on the table, open them up. I don't have to worry about them falling over. This bag is so stinking cute. Thank you, Toby, so much. I hope all of you guys go check out her site. Go check out all her social media things. I'll have all of her links down below. She's incredible. Grab this pattern. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section below. I'll have timestamps for every single part of this video. This bag can come together very, very quickly. Even when we do all of the different additions, it is not a challenging bag. It's not going to take you days and days to make this. Now, if you leave off a lot of this stuff, leave off the tassel, leave off the pockets, I mean, it's just a couple hours at the most. It's going to come together so quickly. All right, let's get started. So let's talk material. You're gonna need about 1/4 yard for that middle triangle. This is gonna be 1/4 yard whether you're using it for just one side or both. You need a very small cut for that middle triangle. So I suggest doing something really fun and bright like I am, or do something basic and then go bold with the sides. For the contrasting fabric, you're gonna want 1/2 yard. I am using vinyl today, but it's a very, very thin vinyl. It's very lightweight. On my previous bag, I did use a very heavy vinyl and it worked perfectly as well. So we'll see how this one works today. And then for the lining, you're also gonna want 1/2 yard of fabric. I'm using quilt cotton. You could use waterproof canvas here, but we do have a lot of bulky seams and corners, so I do prefer using quilt cotton for this bag. However, waterproof canvas would be beautiful. For our interfacing, you're gonna need at least 1/2 yard of woven interfacing. I have Pellon Shape Flex here. And then also, I would suggest about 1/2 yard of Decoville Light. Now, Decoville Light is completely optional. I would add this to any exterior pieces of fabric that are quilt cotton, but I don't think you need to add it on vinyl. I am today, though, just to test it out. So we'll go over that in just a moment. But these are the only two interfacings. If you don't have Decoville Light, that's fine. Just double up your woven interfacing on your quilt cotton and you should be fine. All right, here's the majority of the other stuff we'll be using today. You're gonna need 2 zippers. Both of my zippers are number 5 zipper tapes. You're gonna need both of them to be 8.5 inches long. If you wanna use a number 3 zipper for the inside pocket, the lining pocket, that's perfectly fine. That's actually what is suggested in the pattern. If you don't want to add that inside zipper pocket, you can totally just skip that and just use one zipper for the very top of the bag. My marking tools I'm using today are a friction erasable marker and an air erasing marker. The friction marker is not meant to be used on fabric, but I do use it in seams and on the back side of things where I know it won't be seen at all. I have my turning tool, which I use for every bag, a bowl full of clover clips. The needle I'm using today is a Microtex 8012. I have just regular Gutermann thread for the bobbin, and then I have Gutermann Mara 70 weight for the top, so that just looks a little bit nicer when we're doing top stitching. I'll be using one of these little hardware kits here for the tassel. I have my bag tag. Wash away double-sided tape is going to make zipper install a lot easier. My Beacon 3-in-1 glue, always have this when making bags. Since I'm doing the wristlet today, I only need one D-ring and one swivel hook. If you're doing a crossbody strap, you're gonna need 2 D-rings, 2 swivel hooks, and a slider. For install of my tassel, I have my little set of screwdrivers here. If you're using Chicago screws for that really cool design, you're also gonna want these small screwdrivers to install that. And then I just have some masking tape to help hold things in place when I need to and I can't use pins. All right, let's go over the pattern pieces. For your back panel, if you want just one piece of fabric, you're gonna use this piece A1. Now, if you don't want to do the triangular detail on the front, just use 2 of these for the entire bag. And then again, you're making this very, very easy if you do that. So you can just use 2 of these for your exterior, or you can use 1 for the back. I have that very thin vinyl that I'm using, and then I went ahead and added a layer of Decoville Light. And I'm gonna be completely honest, it feels very stiff. I'm not so sure that adding Decoville Light to my vinyl was the best idea, but we're gonna try it out today because this is a very light vinyl. It has you know, a very thin drape to it. So I wanted to beef it up a little bit, but I don't know if that's going to be good. We're gonna work this out together. For your lining, you're gonna have 2 pieces for A2. And these are gonna be 2 quilt cotton cuts or waterproof canvas. Since I'm using quilt cotton, I have them interfaced with my Pellon Shape Flex. Next up, we have our 2 side contrasting pieces. So these are pieces C1 and C2. As you can see, I'm using that vinyl, and I do have these both interfaced with the Decoville Light. We're gonna see how this works out, okay? We're gonna see how it works out. And then for the middle triangle, I have piece B, and this is a piece of quilt cotton with the Pellon Shape Flex and a layer of Decoville Light. So I have fabric, Shape Flex, Decoville Light all together. I do suggest that for your quilt cotton for the exterior especially. I just don't know if we need it on the vinyl. We'll see. Okay, these are the pattern pieces that I'm using today that do not require a template. First, we have our interior slip pocket, and then we have our interior zipper pocket. Both of these are quilt cotton. They both have the Shape Flex adhered to them. Next, we have our zipper tabs. This is quilt cotton, and I did add the Shape Flex to it. I don't always add woven interfacing to my zipper tabs because I don't want them to be too bulky, but I'm going to do it today because the material is on the thinner side. And then we have a wristlet strap. I'm using my vinyl for that. I do suggest you use vinyl for this or beef up your quilt cotton. So maybe add 1 skinny strip of Decoville Light, maybe just add 2 layers of woven interfacing, but you want your wristlet strap to be a little bit beefier. My D-ring connector is a piece of quilt cotton, and it has the Shape Flex attached to it. And then I have my tassel piece. So this is just going to be the little fringe of the tassel. I'm not using the other pattern pieces to wrap the tassel because I will be using a piece of hardware for that. And just because I can for my wristlet strap, I will use 1 rivet. But that's the only rivet I'm using today. All right, so since I already have all of my pattern pieces fused with their interfacings and stabilizers, we're just gonna get started with building that front exterior panel. So we're just gonna put it together just like that. Isn't that sweet? Oh, I love this. I love triangles and purses. I don't know what it is about it, but I love it. So we're gonna start with the right side over here, and I'm just gonna take my side piece and lay it right side down, right sides together with my center piece. And you can see we have these nice little notches on the top and the bottom. So everything should line up pretty well. And I'm gonna take some clips and clip these together. Now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and sew along this clipped edge at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have these 2 attached, we're going to press the panel away from the center. And then on the back, we're just gonna press open the seam. So I'm gonna finger press this. You could use an iron here. If you're using an iron, just make sure you don't let the iron actually touch the vinyl. So use a piece of scrap fabric over this if you need to. I know this can be pretty stiff. There we go. Okay, now with that seam open on the back, we're gonna go back to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along both edges of this seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's gonna hold that flat seam back there nice and flat and thin for us. All right, there we go. Isn't that sweet? So now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So take the other contrasting fabric and lay it right sides together. Now remember, as you're piecing this, it shouldn't be like this. You see what I mean? This isn't going to work. So you need to make sure you always lay this out the way it's going to be in the end before you sew it together. We all do it. We all sew them on the wrong way, okay? We all do it. So now we're just gonna lay this right sides together, clip along that edge, and now let's sew along this clipped edge at 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. You might have noticed that I do backstitch at the beginning and the end of these seams. I don't always, because this is going to be eaten up in another seam, so you don't really need to backstitch, but because I'm going to be yanking on it so much and my material is so firm because I added that Decoville light, I just try to make sure I don't have any chance of it all coming apart. So now let's press that side panel away from the middle, there we go, and then go on the back and open up those seams. There we go. And I can tell you that Decoville light on the vinyl is getting very thick. I'm a little worried about attaching the zipper. We can do it though, we'll be fine. All right, once you have that seam pressed open on the back, let's go take this back to the sewing machine and top stitch along both sides of that seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, there we go, there's our front panel. Now I'll be honest, when I originally saw this design, I really wanted to add some piping right here. I think that would be so beautiful. However, this top edge right here is going to be attached to a zipper. And as you can see, this little corner up here, it can get bulky, which can make attaching it to the zipper and then folding it over and top stitching it a little tricky. So if you want to try piping, go ahead and do it. And then make sure you tag me if you do it, because I want to see it. I think it'd look beautiful, but it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. So now I'm going to insert my bag tag. I measured 2 inches down from this center mark right here because that center point of our triangle is the midpoint of the top edge. And then I just made a dot. I'm going to grab my washer and use my washer to line up and mark placements for the prongs of my bag tag, just like that. And then I'm going to grab a seam ripper and rip along those marked lines for my prongs very gently. Then I can take my metal bag tag, insert it into those slits. Since I have a nice layer of Decoville light here, I don't need to beef up the fabric with anything else. I'm just going to add my washer, push the prongs down. I'm going to tuck my washer in underneath those seams. And then I'm going to grab a piece of woven interfacing and I'm just going to glue it over the back of my prongs. You can fuse this, but to me it's just a little bit quicker to glue it. And there we go. Now we have the bag tag attached to the front of our bag. Isn't that a cute little panel? I love that. Okay, you can go ahead and set this to the side for just a minute. Okay, so now let's grab our lining panels and let's just mark the midpoints along the top edges of our lining panels. So you can just fold this in half, wrong sides or right sides together, and then just pinch that corner. You can take some scissors and clip this corner, or you can just use a marker and mark the midpoint. Go ahead and do this for the other lining panel as well. Okay, now you're going to want to mark your zipper placement pocket on the back side of one of your lining pieces. So using that midpoint mark, you're going to measure an 8-inch wide rectangle that's 1/2 of an inch high. Now if you're using a number 3 zipper, you might want to make it 3/8 of an inch high so it's a little bit skinnier. It's not so big for your zipper. And then after you have your 8-inch by 1/2 of an inch rectangle marked and it's centered, you're going to draw a midpoint line going across the whole length of your pocket. And then you're going to draw little triangles going in from the top corner in about 1/2 of an inch. I don't even measure this, but about 1/2 of an inch in, you're just going to draw a triangle that goes down to meet that midpoint line on the top and bottom and on both sides. This is going to help you out when we're putting this whole thing together in just a moment. So now you're going to grab the interior zipper pocket panel and on one of the shorter edges, mark a midpoint line. So just like we did on the lining panel, we're just going to pinch it in half and mark our spot. And it's going to be on one of the shorter edges of your lining panel. Now take your lining panel that has the rectangle on it, move the other one out of the way, and flip it right side up. take your zipper pocket lining panel and lay it right side down. And then using a ruler in those midpoint lines, measure down 1 inch from the top edge of your lining panel and then match up the midpoint lines. So your lining zipper pocket panel should be right side down, 1 inch down from the top. It should look just like this. Since I'm using quilt cotton, I'm just gonna grab some little pins and I'm gonna pin my lining panels together so it all stays together at the sewing machine. I don't want this moving around on me. Okay, so now we can flip this over and take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew along this outer rectangle, that 8 inch by 1/2 inch rectangle. We're just gonna sew along all 4 edges. Okay, once you have that rectangle stitched, then grab your seam ripper, and we're going to rip along the center of that marked middle line, just enough to get our scissors in there. Now I'm gonna grab my scissors and just continue cutting along that middle line until I get to the tip of that triangle. All right, and now I'm gonna cut along those diagonal lines to the corner of my stitched rectangle, but I'm not cutting my stitches that I just made. I'm just getting as close as possible to them. Do this on both sides. Now, since I'm using quilt cotton for my lining, I can use my iron for the next step. We're gonna take that zipper panel, which is that rectangle, and we're gonna push it through that hole that we just cut. And when we do this, we're pulling the lining panels together, wrong sides together. So you have a little kind of skinny top edge, you're gonna do the same thing with that. You're gonna pull that through so that all of the lining panels are wrong sides together. Now this gets a little bit messy, so it might be easier for you to start on one side at a time. So like I like to start on the bottom edge. I just kind of pull both of the panels away from each other like that, and then I'll fold down this bigger piece of fabric. And I'm just trying to get this seam as straight as possible, because if you're not precise about this, it can get kind of wonky and wavy. So just take a few extra seconds here to try to get that nice and straight, and then iron it in place if you're using quilt cotton. If you're using waterproof canvas, you're gonna wanna grab some tape and tape this in place. Okay, now let's do the same thing with that top edge. Now this top edge is pretty skinny, but we can still do it. All right, now let's press down that top edge nice and straight, and then go ahead and press down those shorter edges as well. All right, if you have concerns over this top edge being just a little too skinny and kind of getting unruly when you're working with it, just grab a piece of tape and we can just tape down the very edge of it. So I'm just gonna tape down right along the raw edge, because I don't want to stitch over this tape. I just wanted to hold it down so I don't have to think about it, you know? Okay, so now we're gonna grab our lining pocket zipper, and I'll be honest, I did cut my zipper tape to 9 inches because I like it to be longer than it needs to be, just because I make a lot of mistakes. So if it shifts around a little bit, I'm not gonna be, you know, unpicking and fixing it. So I do cut mine a little bit bigger. Mine's 9 inches. And we're going to lay our zipper right side up, and when the zipper's closed, the zipper pull should be going towards the left. I'm gonna grab my 1/4 inch wash away double-sided tape, and I'm adding it to the very, very edge of the zipper tape. Very, very edge. Not too close to the zipper teeth. Do this on the top and bottom. Okay, now lay your zipper right side up. Again, zipper pull on the left when closed. Grab that lining pocket and lay it so that the lining panel is right side up. And we're going to just center it over our zipper, just like that. See how it's nice and like a little window? I love that. Okay, so I'm going to remove one of the papers from the tape at a time. I find that's a lot easier to kind of control all this. So I'm just going to take off the paper from that top edge, line up my pocket so that it's centered, and then I can just gently push down that top edge, just like that. And now I can take the zipper pull, get it out from underneath, pull it over, and there we go. So now I can take the bottom part, lift it up, push it out of the way, remove the paper from that bottom strip, and then just lay this back down and push it down. There we go. So now it should be nice and straight. That looks good. Okay, so now we can take this to the sewing machine, and we're gonna sew along the lining panel right outside of this rectangle at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that stitched in place, let's flip this over so that the pocket panel is right side up, but the lining is wrong side up. And you can just remove your tape. And now we're going to take the bottom edge of the zipper pocket and fold it up right sides together so that it comes to the top edge of our zipper tape. And it's not much, but we do have enough fabric here to kind of move the lining panel out of the way and just get that small strip up here and clip the bottom edge of your zipper pocket panel to that strip. So we have zipper pocket panel, zipper tape, and then the other edge of that zipper pocket panel all together. And if this is a little messy, don't worry about it. You're not going to notice it in the end. Okay, once you have that clip, now we're just going to clip along the edges on the sides here of our pocket. We want to close up all of these pockets. We're not going to use this pocket to turn the bag out, so everything's going to get closed up. This is why this pocket is completely optional. If you don't feel like doing the zipper pocket, you're not ready for it, just skip this, you'll be fine. Okay, so now we're gonna take this and we're gonna lay it right side up, lining right side up, and we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along all the clipped edges. This is easiest if you turn it upside down like this. Flip the lining panel out of the way. Start at the bottom of this fold here and sew down at 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then rotate, flip the lining out of the way, and just keep sewing at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now you can see I don't have a whole lot of space here, so I am going to use my zipper foot so that I can get all of the layers together and get as close to this fold as I can. But I'm not sewing on the lining panel, right? I'm just sewing along this edge here. And then once I get to the other side, I'll move the lining panel out of the way and sew down at 1/4 inch seam allowance. And there we go, there's your little pocket. Isn't that cute? If you've been making bags for a little bit, but you haven't yet tried to make one of these zipper pockets, I do encourage you to give it a try with this bag. It is optional. If you end up hating it, just make another one of these and you'll be fine. It's one of the easier ones to make. I do really, really hope you'll give it a try if you haven't yet, because it is a really useful addition to any bag. Okay, you can go ahead and put this to the side. So next we're gonna work on the interior slip pocket. Take your interior slip lining pocket and fold it together, right sides together, so that the short edges come up to meet one another. And then just press along that edge. And grab some clips and just clip along the 3 edges so that it's all nice and straight. So on the long raw edge, I'm going to mark about a 4-inch opening. It doesn't have to be very big. About between 3 and 5 inches, I would say. And now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along the bottom edge on the corners and on the shorter edges at 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. So you're gonna leave this space right here open and unstitched. Just 1/4 inch on the side up to meet that mark and on the other side as well. Okay, so once you have this all stitched together, trim down all 4 corners at just a little 45-degree angle like that. And then let's push our fabric so that it's right side out through that hole. Just be gentle so you don't rip those stitches. And then you can poke out these corners. Now, if you have a loose enough fabric, you can just do this with your fingers. Okay, now I got my pressing mat out because I'm gonna iron this. And see how sometimes it kind of bows in like this? That's where the other end of this turning tool comes in handy, because you can put it in the hole and then just kind of push along that side. So I'll just go right into the corners, push down all the way to get it nice and flat, hold it with my fingers, and then press that edge with an iron. And that just helps get that nice straight seam. So I'll do the other side as well too. And then I can press the whole unit along that bottom folded edge. And then for this opening here, I'm just gonna push my fingers in and kind of roll those raw edges down and give it a tug to get it as straight as possible. And then I'm gonna press that seam really well. Okay, so this edge right here that has the opening, it's not perfectly straight, and that's okay. I'm gonna leave it, so that's gonna be the bottom of my pocket. So now before we attach this, I'm gonna take this nice, clean, straight folded edge, and I'm gonna top stitch right along that folded edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. This is gonna be the top of my pocket because honestly, it just looks better. Okay, there we go. Now grab your remaining lining panel that doesn't have a pocket on it. We're gonna use some midpoint marks again to help center all this. So I have my midpoint marked on the top edge of my lining panel. I'm gonna take the top edge of my pocket panel where I just top stitched. I'm gonna fold it in half. And then right in the middle, I'm going to place a pin because I really don't wanna use any sort of markers here. So there we go. Now I have the top edge of my pocket panel pinned with the midpoint. I measured down 1.5 inches from this top edge, and using those midpoint marks to keep everything centered, I laid down my slip pocket. Now I'm gonna grab some tape to hold this in place. You could definitely use pins here if you're using quilt cotton, but otherwise use tape. Now make sure this little edge down here, this has that opening still. I haven't closed that yet. You want to make sure those folded edges are even because we will be top stitching over this, and if one is shorter than the other, it's not going to catch. So let's just hold it all down like this. Okay, so now we can take this to the sewing machine, and starting at the top right edge, I'm going to top stitch down the side along the bottom, making sure I'm catching that fold and closing it, and then up the other side. I do back stitch at the beginning and the end really well. And there you go, nice easy peasy slip pocket. You could definitely sew a center line here if you'd like to make these kind of more like pen pockets. I like a bit of a bigger pocket, so I'm gonna leave it just like that. All right, go ahead and set this to the side. So I have my zipper tab cut to 2 inches by 3 inches because I like to attach it at the same time. So I'm going to take my zipper tab and lay it wrong side up and fold it in half with the longer edges coming together, wrong sides together, and just press along that edge. Then I'm going to open it up, fold those long raw edges up, wrong sides together to meet that middle fold, and then just press this down. Now I can fold the whole unit in half again, and I have like a little hot dog bun here. See, I have the 2 folded edges on top, 1 folded edge on bottom. Now I'm going to grab my zipper for the top of the bag, and I'm just going to insert my zipper all the way to one side of my zipper tab here. Add some clips to hold it in place. I'm going to grab the other end of my zipper tape, and I'm going to insert it in to the other end of my zipper tab. See? This way I can just attach both of them at once. And just get it in there however it's easiest. If you need to put it in upside down, you can put it in upside down. There we go. But this is what mine looks like now. My zipper is attached to the zipper tabs. Now I'm going to top stitch along this bottom folded edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold the zipper tabs in place with the zipper. Once I have it sewn on, then I'll just cut that zipper tab in between the 2 ends of the zipper, and then just trim down the zipper tab so it's the same width as my zipper tape. There we go. Now the zipper is all good. So now let's find the midpoint of our zipper by just folding it in half. And you can use a marker to mark that center midpoint, or take your scissors and make the itty bittiest, tiniest little cut on that top corner. Do this on both sides. All right, now we can install this in the bag. Grab your front exterior panel with the triangle and lay it right side up. Grab your zipper tape, and when the zipper is closed, it should be going towards the left, and lay it right side down, matching up the midpoint mark on your zipper tape with that top point of your triangle, which is the midpoint mark on the top edge of your front panel. Clip those together, and then clip the rest of the zipper tape in place. It's not going to be the same length as the top of your bag. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be shorter. All right, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and just baste along this clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have that basted in place, lay it right side up. Grab your lining panel with the slip pocket and lay it right side down and match up these top edges. And then just clip in place, lining right side to exterior right side with the zipper in the middle. All right, now let's stitch along this clipped edge at 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch seam allowance, whichever one is easier for you. Make sure you're using a zipper foot. Okay, now the tricky part. We're gonna pull the lining and the exterior wrong sides together. Now I will tell you, I find this to be the hardest part. Top stitching this side of the zipper tape can be very challenging because of that bulk right here at the top of that triangle. We're gonna do our best. And since I added that Decoville light, it is even bulkier than it needs to be. I still don't know if I would suggest adding it, and we'll see by the end of it. All right, so I'm just gonna press this with my fingers really well. Woo, that is some bulk right there. So if you find that the material you're using is making this very bulky, you might want to switch your needle out to a 90-14. I think I actually will. I think I'm going to switch my needle to a 90-14, and I'm going to increase the tension on my machine. So my machine's tension naturally is at like 5.5. I'm going to increase it to a 7. Everybody's machine is totally different, but I'm going to increase my tension so that it don't get those little loops on the back. All right, so now let's top stitch along this edge, only along the zipper tape, so not off the edges, only where there is zipper tape. Top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do back stitch at the beginning and the end, 1 stitch. All right, my machine definitely had an opinion about this right here, but it was okay. The changes that I made it so that it went over it. It did stick a minute, but I don't have any looping on the back here. It's a little unstraight, but I'm okay with that. But that is the hardest part. I really do think that's the hardest part. Okay, so now we're just going to attach the other side the same way. So grab your back panel, and if you haven't already, let's mark the midpoint along the top edge of the back panel. Lay your back panel right side up, and then grab your front panel with the zipper and lay it right side down so that the zipper is right sides together with the back panel. Match up your midpoint marks on the zipper tape and the back panel and clip those together first, and then clip the rest of the edge. And now let's baste down the zipper to the back panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So once you have that attached, grab your remaining lining panel, and with the zipper wrong side up, take your lining panel and lay it right side down, and just match it along that top edge that you just sewed the zipper onto. All right, now let's sew along this edge at 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch seam allowance, whichever is easier with your zipper foot, and just go along the entire edge. All right, now let's fold the lining panel and the back panels wrong sides together. And you might find it easier if you zip up this main zipper when you're trying to flatten everything out. So I like to pull the lining panel all the way down to the bottom of the exterior panel and then clip them together down here, and that'll make it easier to flatten out the seam up here. Okay, now just press along this seam really well with your fingers. If you're not using vinyl, you can definitely get an iron here and press this. Once you have it as straight as you can get it, let's top stitch along this back edge over here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Remember, we're only top stitching where there's zipper tape. You're not going all the way to the edges. I do back stitch once at the beginning and the end. All right, there we go. We have it all stitched together. It's coming along really nicely. Nice and quick too, I like that. Okay, set this to the side for just a moment. So now we're gonna make the D-ring connector, and I am using quilt cotton for this. I probably could use the vinyl from the bag because it is thinner. If you're using really thick vinyl, I found that was too much for this D-ring connector. So we're gonna take our D-ring connector and lay it wrong side up, fold it in half, right sides together. You can just press this with your fingers to get that fold, open it back up, and press the parallel raw edges up, wrong sides together to meet in the middle, just like that. You can definitely press this with an iron if you like, but I find finger pressing is good enough. And then fold it all together again, just like we did the zipper tab. So we have our little hot dog bun. Grab a couple clips to hold it in place. And now I'm going to top stitch along both of the folded edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have that top stitch, grab your D-ring, and we're just going to insert our tab into the D-ring, folding it over the flat side just like that. And now I'm just going to clip this. Now grab your bag and let's work on the front exterior panel. So move the lining panel out of the way. You only want the front exterior panel. Measure down about 1 inch from the top edge and then clip your D-ring in place. And now don't clip it sideways like this. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I like to try to clip it straight. And I'm gonna have the bottom edge overhang by about 1/4 of an inch. So on the top edge, I might be overhanging by about 1/2 of an inch, but I want this nice and tight in there. So I'm just gonna add it just like this, and now I'm gonna go baste this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. There we go. Okay, now we just have to put the whole bag together. So first thing, unzip your zipper, but unzip it about halfway, maybe a little bit more. You don't want it to go all the way because this can get caught in your seam and then you break a needle and it's no good. Take your exterior panels and fold them up right sides together. Take your lining panels and fold them right sides together, just like that. Now we're gonna focus on the lining side first. So take your lining panels and line up all the edges, right sides together, and clip in place. Don't worry so much about the seam up here between the lining and exterior just yet, because we will deal with that when we deal with the exterior panels. Just try to clip your lining close to it, and then clip along the bottom edge. All right, so just focusing on the lining side, I marked a 5-inch opening along this bottom edge here, which I'm not going to sew in. On the sides and on the bottom edge right here outside of that opening, I'm going to sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to get close to the seam between the exterior and the lining, but I'm not gonna sew on it. We're gonna deal with that later. So on the sides here, 3/8 of an inch. On the bottom edge right here, 3/8 of an inch. Do not sew inside of these little rectangles here. So you can sew over the edge, just don't sew, you know, into these corners here. Okay, there we go. So now we're going to box these corners. So taking your little corners down here, pull along those cut edges so that the seams come together just like that. And then I'm going to fold one seam in one direction, the other seam in the other direction, so they just kind of give each other a little hug. And then clip along that edge. Do the same thing on the other side, only on the lining. Remember, we're not worried about the exterior, we're just working on the lining. And now let's sew along these two short edges here at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, now, the part I haven't done yet. She provides you with two different methods of closing up the exterior. I've done one of them, but we're not going to do the one that I've practiced. We're going to do the one I haven't tried yet. So first things first is take your two exterior panels, lay them right sides together, and we're going to clip along the bottom edge here. Now we're going to sew along this bottom clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, this is going to be tricky with my Decoville light, but I think we can do it. So I measured 1.5 inches up from the bottom edge and made a mark on both sides of my exterior. See, 1.5 inches up. And now I'm going to pinch right on that mark. And since my material is so thick right now, I'm just going to add a clip and just pinch on each one of those marks and add a clip. And when you do this, kind of tug on it because you want the whole bottom edge to end up kind of pinching there. You might find it easier to just fold the whole bottom edge just like this and add a clip. There we go. So now I have one side folded up 1.5 inches from the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. All right, there we go. So this is kind of what we have now. See, it's a nice flat bottom. And now what we're going to do is we're going to tuck this seam in and bring those two folds together. So they should line up on the sides. The 2 points should line up on the sides. And we can just add each fold into the other's clip. See, it's like a little pinch sandwich. So over here on the left, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to push down the seam so that those folds overcome it. Line up the edges, and we do have a little bit, you know, hanging off. It's supposed to be like that, but I'm lining up the points right here and then adding them into each other's clips. There we go. And we can kind of just push that down for now. So this is what it looks like. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So we have a little bit of overhang here on the sides, but the edges over here on the side should still be lined up. So I'm going to add some clips along these side edges all the way up to the top. Remember, we haven't sewn the seam yet between the lining and the exterior, so add some clips there as well. You can fold the seam towards the exterior if it's easier, or towards the lining. Do this for the other side as well. So Toby mentions that this is a good idea to use for fabric. If your exterior is fabric or very, very light vinyl, this is great for that. And I can see why now, because we do have quite a lot of layers here. On my first bag, the vinyl was so thick, there's no way I could have done this. So I love that. I love, love, love that in the pattern she offers that. If you have a lightweight fabric, do this. If you have a really heavy fabric, do that, because it allows you to use whatever you want. That's fantastic, Toby. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew along these edges on the sides at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to start, though, where our stitching ended on our lining. So this might be a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're just going to slowly decrease, come down to the seam at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and continue on all the way to the bottom at a 1/4 inch. You're going to want to backstitch over this connector seam right here between the lining and the exterior. And also feel for those zipper tabs. Like, I can feel my zipper tab right here. You do not want to sew on the zipper tab. We want to get close to it, but we don't want to sew on it. So just be careful, go slow, get close to that zipper tab. I like to use a zipper foot here because it allows me to get close without having any wonky seams, and then go down the sides. Do that for both sides, and I will go over these stitches on the sides a second time since I'm using vinyl. sewn together. Came together well, definitely okay with the Decoville light. It was thicker than, you know, it needed to be, but if you're using quilt cotton or a thin vinyl, that would be perfect. So I'm gonna trim down these corners, and I'm gonna trim down a bit of that D-ring tab. Remove all my clips, and this is the moment of truth, guys. I've never ever seen a box corner done this way, so I'm very excited to see if this works. So I'm gonna open up my lining. I should have made my hole a little bit bigger. That's fine. And then I'm going to very gently push the material through that hole. All right, so now I'm gonna pull the lining out, and then I'm gonna reach into that hole and push out the corners of the bottom here. Well, check that out. That is such a cool and unique way to box a bottom. I am so confused by this right now. What the heck? That's so cool. Okay, so now I'm gonna push in the lining and pop out my zipper tabs. Those got hidden away in there. Press out those sides. I'm gonna push in the lining just because I want to see what it looks like. All right, it's a little wrinkly, it needs a bit of a press, but that sure is cute, isn't that? That's such an original look. I've never seen a box corner like that. Very, very cool, Toby. Very cool. All right, let's close up that lining. So I'm just gonna pull it out. Let's put our rings back on. So just straighten out that bottom edge of your lining, insert your fingers, kind of pull on the corners, and roll those raw edges down. If it's not a perfect 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch, that's okay. You just want to get them rolled in there so they get caught in the seam. We want the stitching to hold it all closed. All right, now let's top stitch along that clipped opening at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And there we go. There's our little bag. I mean, it needs a press. I'll give it a quick press before we're done. But look how cute that is. And we have those beautiful little zipper tabs up top. Fun vinyl on the back. We have our D-ring. That's adorable. You know what? I think I'm actually going to add a rivet to this as well because this is a little bit bigger and I like my D-rings to be really tight in there. So I'm going to quickly add a rivet to this D-ring. So to do that, all I have to do is grab my hole punch and eyeball and punch a hole. This is a good thing to do after you make the bag. I wouldn't attach this rivet before you sew those sides just in case you don't want to accidentally sew over that metal rivet. And then I'll grab my other press and set it. You guys make fun of me for having 2 presses. There'll probably be a 3rd one day, you know it. All right, there's our bag. Let's put this to the side and work on the wristlet strap. Okay, so grab your wristlet strap and lay it wrong side up and mark a line going down the midpoint of the entire length. Now grab some double-sided tape and let's just tape along that midpoint line, but leaving about 1/2 of an inch untaped on each end. So you don't need it to go all the way from the beginning to the end. I'm just eyeballing this. And then you can remove that paper. And then take the parallel long raw edges and fold them up wrong sides together to meet that midpoint line. And try to get them in the tape. And not all tape is great for everything, so if you need to use some clips to help hold this in place, just add some clips. Do this for both of the long edges. Once you have that clip, then fold the whole unit together so that those raw edges are just getting tucked on the inside. And then you can just add each side to the other clip. All right, now grab your swivel hook and let's add our swivel hook. So this is going to be a musical chairs of clips here because we got to move the clip out of the way as we add the swivel on. Don't worry, we're going to top stitch this, just not yet. Try to get it towards the middle so it's out of the way. Okay. So now you have something like this. So we're going to take the raw edges and we're going to pull them up to meet, and we're going to make the vinyl go right sides together. We're going to open up these raw edges. Remember, we didn't have tape there. So open it up as much as you need to. If you have to pull some of it off the tape, then just pull it off the tape. And line up these short edges together. Fabric is right sides together, and clip in place. Okay, now let's sew along the short edge right here at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have those sewn together, let's just trim off those corners at a 45-degree angle, just like that. And now let's press open that seam and then refold our strap so that it comes to meet at that midpoint line. and then fold the whole unit again. I know it's kind of like a mess, but trust me, as you pull on it and push it, it's going to come together very neatly. This seam right here should not be crazy bulky because we opened up that seam. So you shouldn't kill your sewing machine when we go over it. All right, so this is what we have. We have a ring with our swivel hook attached to it. Now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along both folded edges. Just move the ring out of the way as you go. You're gonna top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. Once you have that all stitched in place, slide your swivel so that it's right against your seam, because that part is pretty flat. You know, when I pinch it, it kind of stays flat like that. So get that swivel right against the seam like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stitch really close to the swivel hook, just back and forth a couple times to hold it in place, and then I'll use a rivet over here to hold the rest of it in place. Okay, now just for fun, let's add a rivet. I'm gonna add the rivet above the stitching, so further in, but close to where I sewed. My goal is to not go through the stitches on the bottom here, and that was part of the reason for the top stitching, just to remind me where those stitches are. And grab the other press and set it. All right, there we go. The wristlet strap is done. It is adorable. I'm gonna grab my bag, add it to my D-ring just like that. How cute is that? All right, for the last step, let's just make a tassel. So on the back of your tassel piece, draw a line that is 3/8 of an inch down from the top edge and horizontal. And now what we're gonna do is we're just going to trim little 1/8 of an inch strips going from the bottom edge up to that line. So I eyeball this. I don't measure anything and draw it or anything like that. It's all eyeballing. All right, so I am using hardware for my tassel, but in the pattern, she gives you instructions on how to do this with all vinyl. So if you don't have all this stuff, you can still make a tassel. So what we're gonna do first is fit our tassel to the tassel hook. So we're just gonna roll this so that the wrong sides come in and the outside is our pretty side of our fabric. And just roll it nice and tight all the way up, keeping it as straight as possible. All right, once you have it rolled up, nice and tight, as best as you can get it. Don't worry, we're gonna use glue to help this later. Grab your tassel cap and then just insert your tassel into the cap, just to make sure it fits. So this is a thinner vinyl, so this will fit fine just like this. But when I did my other one with the white vinyl, it was very thick. So what I ended up having to do was cut off, you know, 1 inch or so off the edge of this just so it'll fit. So this is why we do this first. We want to get it the size we want it, and then we'll add the glue. So once I know this is good, I don't need to cut anything off, I'm going to grab my Beacon 3-in-1 glue, and I'm just going to add a small thin line along that top edge where we did not cut on the back side. And then I'm just going to very gently and tightly roll this all up. Go slow for this. We want that glue to get nice and tacky so that it holds everything together. All right, I'm gonna grab a clip just to hold this for just a moment. Now I'm gonna grab my tassel cap and I'm gonna add some glue on the top of it and a little bit on the sides too, just to help keep the tassel in place. Now I'm gonna grab my little tassel here and I'm gonna just smush it in there. High up as it'll go, so the little tassels should start, the cuts should start right at the bottom of the tassel cap. There we go. How cute is that? Okay, so now you'll notice on this tassel cap there is a big hole and a small hole. So I'm going to go to the side with the big hole. I'm going to grab my awl and I'm going to very gently pierce this in there. What I'm doing is I'm piercing a hole through all those layers of vinyl to make it easier to put in the screw. Just nice and gentle. Don't try to hurt yourself here. So now I'm going to grab my screw and I'm going to insert it into the bigger side, the bigger hole. And I have my screwdriver and I'm just going to gently screw this in place. Now that screw is nice and sharp, so it'll help cut the vinyl out of the way as it goes. So if it's getting jammed, don't strip your screw, just unscrew it Nice and gentle. And we just want this to get flush a little bit below the edge of the tassel cap. So you don't want your screw sticking out, but if you screw it too far, the little pointy edge is going to come out that small hole, and then it'll poke you. You don't want that. It's nice and tight. There we go. Perfect. Look at this adorable little party tassel. Isn't that fun? Then all we have to do is grab our bag and attach our tassel wherever we want it. You can attach it to a zipper pull. I like to attach it to the D-ring. And there we go. How cute is that? Alrighty, how sweet is this? I love this little shape, and it is very beginner friendly. Like I said, use thinner material, especially along this top strip right here. This point can get bulky, so the heavier material you have, the harder it's gonna be. I use Decoville Light on all the exterior pieces, so on the vinyl and the quilt cotton, and I know that makes it pretty crinkly. I do need to give it a good press one more time. I don't think you need it. I don't think you need the Decoville Light here. If you're using like a medium to heavyweight vinyl for the contrasting sides in the back, definitely add Decoville Light to this quilt cotton center. Otherwise, I don't think you need the Decoville Light. I think that just the vinyl on its own will be great. But look at this. I love an accessory. Look at that little tassel and the wristlet strap. So cute. So here's the first one I did. And this vinyl was much thicker. So I want to look at them side by side. So this one's a little bit taller because of how we box those bottoms. Do you guys want to see a comparison? So here's a comparison of the two box bottoms. You can see this one with the rivet, it goes up higher, so it has a bigger bottom, a flatter bottom, and it makes the bag a little bit shorter. I think I actually prefer this one over this one. But if you don't have Chicago screws or rivets, then this one is obviously going to be the better one for you, and it's still adorable. What you could do though is you could pull this up even higher. So remember how we pulled it up 1.5 inches from the bottom edge? Maybe pull it up 2 inches. If you pulled it up, you know, that side 2 inches when we pinched it, do that, and then you're gonna have a bigger box bottom that'll be more equivalent to this one. Isn't that cool though? I absolutely love that. Toby, that was so kind of you to add in the pattern. If you're using heavier fabric, try this way. If you're using lighter fabric, try this way. It makes it so much more accessible a pattern to everyone because not all of us have the material that the pattern calls for. And a lot of times if we don't have the material and we say, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it, we don't actually end up making the bag. You know what I mean? So this is a great, great pattern. I cannot wait to see what you do next, Toby. I really can't. She's got some amazing patterns already, guys. And I mean, sky's the limit for her, right? So cute. So I hope you guys love making this as much as I do. Don't forget to go check out Toby's website, grab the pattern, find her on all the social medias. You'll be so inspired by everything she's making. I hope that you're having a great day. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.